everybody, I am Tara of House 3 Bookshelves, the first of my name, the reader of books, and the mother of babies. Well, baby. And today I am proud to present a tag of Ice and Fire. I've heard a lot of booktubers say that they have read A Game of Thrones by George R.R. Martin, which is the first book in the Song of Ice and Fire series, but that they just didn't continue with the series for one reason or another. So I went looking for people who did. I wanted to find booktubers who have read the whole series and who love it as much as I do. And I found a few, but I got kinda sidetracked when I found the A Song of Ice and Fire tag created by Jackie at Books with Elves and immediately thought, I gotta do this tag. But as I thought about how I would answer the questions, I kept thinking about questions that weren't in the tag and kind of wishing that they were. So logical conclusion is make my own tag. Now it's hard to be vague when you're talking about plot twists and character deaths, so this is your spoiler warning. Spoiler warning, spoiler warning, this is going to be full of spoilers for all 5 books of the series and all 7 seasons of the show. However, I haven't read any of the released chapters for The Winds of Winter, so there will not be any spoilers for those. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Number 1, the POV you couldn't wait to get to. In A Game of Thrones, it was definitely Daenerys. She was my first favorite character. I found her storyline to be the most intriguing and fascinating and enjoyable in the first book. I loved her growth from this young, helpless girl who was controlled and used as a pawn by all the men around her into a really strong woman who took control of her own life, took control of her fate, who inspired this culture who would never follow a woman to follow her. And oh yeah, hatched 3 dragons. In A Clash of Kings, Tyrion. I already love Tyrion because who doesn't love Tyrion, but A Clash of Kings is really where he shines. He is at his most scheming, his most cunning. All the plots he comes up with are so brilliant. I loved how he rooted out Pycelle as the informer. I loved the wildfire plot, the chain plot, which, by the way, single-handedly won the Battle of the Blackwater. And then his moment of glory when he gathered up the courage to lead the attack on Stannis' men and even shamed the other men into following him into battle. And of course, all the humor. Tyrion's humor is absolute gold. And then in A Storm of Swords, I most look forward to Jaime's POV. I hated him at the beginning, as I'm sure everybody did, but as soon as we get into his POV, as soon as we start to hear his thoughts, you start to see him in a different light. And every hint of backstory, every hint of his true character left me wanting to know more. The bath scene between Jaime and Brienne, the revelation of why he killed the Mad King, was one of my favorite scenes in the entire series, and that is what solidified Jaime as my favorite character in the series. And in A Feast for Crows and A Dance with Dragons, I really loved the Dornish POVs, especially Ariane's. I loved the introduction to this whole new territory, this whole new family, a whole new way of life in this world. I also really started loving Jon in A Dance with Dragons. I did not like him very much at the beginning of the series, but by the time he was made Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, really started to be interested in him. I really started to enjoy the way his character was developing, so I loved getting his story in that book. Number 2, the POV you couldn't wait to get through. Without a doubt, Catelyn Stark. I never liked Catelyn from the very beginning. The way she treated Jon when he went to say goodbye to Bran, hated her right off the bat. So I didn't care to read her chapters, I really didn't. And they were boring. Everything on Robb's side of the war was so boring. I just did not care at all. And later on in the series, Tyrion. Have to admit, did not care for Tyrion's chapters in A Dance with Dragons. They were just so bogged down with whining about Tysha and Shay and Penny. Oh my god, everything with Penny. Oh my god. Cut that out of the series. I'd be okay with that. Number 3, the house you pledge fealty to. I am almost embarrassed to admit this after what the show did to them, but I pledge fealty to House Martell. Their history is just fascinating. About 1,000 years before the events of A Song of Ice and Fire, House Martell was one of the lesser ruling families of Dorne until they made a marriage alliance with the warrior queen Nymeria, who had just come over from Essos with an army or a fleet of 10,000 ships. Together they conquered and united all of Dorne under the single ruling power of House Martell. Fast forward 700 years to Aegon's conquest of the 7 kingdoms, except that's a lie because Aegon never actually conquered Dorne. Dorne resisted Aegon and several other Targaryen invasions over the next 2 centuries thanks to House Martell being smart enough not to meet an army that had dragons out on the open field. Instead, they used stealth and subterfuge and guerrilla tactics against their enemies. Dorne did finally join the fold and the 7 kingdoms, but not through conquest, through a marriage alliance, a double marriage alliance actually, which essentially combined combined the bloodlines of House Martell and House Targaryen and made House Martell part of the royal dynasty. Doran suffered the fewest casualties of any of the Seven Kingdoms in both Aegon's conquest and the War of the Five Kings, pretty much by staying out of it. They let everybody else fight and weaken each other, while Dorne and House Martell stayed strong. What other house is even half that badass? As for the characters, I didn't have strong feelings about Oberyn either way the first time I read the books, but Pedro Pascal's portrayal of Oberyn in the show made me fall in love with the character, and I can't wait for my next reread so I can see Oberyn with that new perspective. Doran is very intriguing. I love how he uses his physical weakness and this facade of passivity to hide the fact that he is plotting just as much as everybody else. I love his plot to marry Arianne to Viserys and support a Targaryen restoration, and I love how he has a finger in every pie by putting one of Oberyn's daughters on Tommen's small council, putting another one close to the High Septon, and I suspect he had something to do with another of Oberyn's daughters infiltrating the Citadel. The only thing that disappointed me so far about Doran was his plan to send Quentyn to Daenerys. It wasn't a bad plan in and of itself, but he should have given Quentyn way more support than he did. He basically said, hey, go to Essos, bring back Daenerys, okay, thanks, bye. And Arianne is another strong female character in a series chock full of strong female characters. She is hot-tempered and adventurous like her uncle, but she's also calculating and ambitious like her father. Her POV chapters were some of my favorites in A Feast for Crows, and some of the ones I'm looking most forward to in The Winds of Winter. And Quentyn, let's just not talk about Quentyn. Number 4, a plot twist that blew your mind. Which one didn't? First, some honorable mentions, the Red Wedding. Gotta mention the Red Wedding. I had to put the book down and walk away. I was that shocked and disturbed. And like I said, didn't like Catelyn, didn't care for Robb, didn't really care that they were dead, but it was just too much to handle. And Lady Stoneheart. I think I literally said, what? When I read that part. And Jon's death. And I say death because even though it really scared me when it happened, after a little bit of thought, I realized he's not going to stay dead forever. But the most mind-blowing plot twist has to be Ned's death. Killing the main character just doesn't happen. I was so sure something was going to happen that moment right before the sword came down where someone came in and said, stop! But nobody did. That sword came down. His head came off. George R.R. Martin is known for breaking convention, and Ned's death was the first and I think the best example of that. And it's one of the things that sets A Song of Ice and Fire apart from other series, the fact that George R.R. Martin goes where stories usually don't go. It was one of the things that solidified the series as something amazing. Number 5, a character you love that everyone else hates, and or a character you hate that everyone else loves. I am a fan of Theon Greyjoy. Not as a person, he is a terrible person, I do not deny that, but he is one hell of a well-developed character. I had sympathy for him even in the first 2 books. He grew up as a hostage of Winterfell, and even though the Starks seem to treat him really well, it can't be a pleasant life knowing that you are only with these people so that they can kill you if your father rebels again. And when he finally gets back to the Iron Islands after so many years away, he finally goes home to his family and they treat him like a piece of shit on the bottom of their shoes. And then yes, he did some really terrible things and there's no excuse for that, but there is understanding. He did it out of desperation for his father's love and for any place where he could belong. And then Reek. The Reek chapters are, I think, the most disturbing ones of the entire series. They were probably the hardest for me to read. They were heartbreaking, but they were exceptionally well written. I really hope Theon gets some kind of redemption in the end. As for a character I hate that most people love, this might be a shocker to you guys, but Ned Stark. I hate Ned Stark. His so-called honorable actions resulted in the endangerment or death of every one of his children. The honorable action I am mostly referring to is his warning Cersei that he was going to go to Robert with the truth of her kid's parentage. He made these threats, basically, to Cersei. He threatened her and her children while his own children were still in King's Landing. They were literally living under Cersei's roof. You don't go and threaten somebody when your kids are under her control. He should have gotten Sansa and Arya out of King's Landing, home to Winterfell, somewhere safe, before he ever went to Cersei. And for that, for putting the safety of Cersei's kids over his own, for putting his children into that kind of danger, hate him. Number 6, your OTP. Jon and Daenerys. I shipped Kit Harington and Emilia Clarke. Not seriously, because they're real people, you know, but there is this picture, this photo shoot. I'll put it right here. I thought they were so cute. They had such chemistry together, and I just got this idea in my head that they should get together in real life. Because of that, I half jokingly shipped John and Danny as well. I didn't really think it was ever gonna happen. But season 7, all my dreams came true. I don't know if the books are actually gonna have them get together in the same way that they did in the show. If anything, it's gonna be a marriage alliance. It's gonna be political. It's gonna be dry. Maybe they'll fall in love. I hope they'll fall in love. I've even had these mini Jon and Daenerys Funkos on my keychain for years. Number 7, something from the books you wish had made it into the show. The Dorne storyline. I am still salty about what the show did to Dorne. They reduced Arianne to the laughable caricatures of the Sand Snakes. They made Doran a feeble red shirt, and they turned his carefully laid out plot to this horribly thought out and even more horribly executed power play by Ilaria, of all people. I understand the need to condense characters and plot lines, especially in a series as huge as A Song of Ice and Fire. I get it. But why? Why would they insert 3 one-dimensional throwaway characters, the Sand Snakes I'm talking about, of course, instead of keeping Arianne, who is a 3-dimensional character who is important to the storyline? Yep, still salty, always gonna be salty, never gonna forgive him for that. Number 8, something from the show that you hope will make it into the books. Jon and Dany, obviously. Tyrion becoming Dany's Hand of the Queen is also something high on my list for things to happen in the books. And Dany burning all the calls, that was so freaking amazing. At the end of A Dance with Dragons, the way it's left, I thought that Drogon was going to eventually save her from the Khalasar, but if Dany can do that herself, yeah, that's way better. And the history of the Night's King and the White Walkers. You don't get a whole lot of insight into them in the books, and I love what the show has done with that. I love that we got the origin. I like that the Night's King is his own entity and not just, you know, faceless big bad somewhere. So I really hope we get more of the White Walkers, more of their background. Not necessarily what's in the show, just something. I want to know more about them. Number 9, a theory that had better prove true or you will riot. A year ago, I would have said R plus L equals J, but it is officially canon, baby. But another theory I am almost as passionate about is Jaime as the Valonqar. There is just so much evidence. Let's take a look at the wording of the prophecy. The Valonqar will wrap his hands around your pale white throat and choke the life from you. Detractors to the theory say that Jaime can't be the Valonqar because he only has one hand. But when have prophecies in A Song of Ice and Fire ever been that literal? And Jaime technically does have 2 hands. One of them just isn't real. And Cersei hates his golden hand. She hates that he is no longer a whole man. And that repulsion is one of the factors that led to the relationship falling apart. So how poetic would it be if Jaime kills her with the hand that she hates? And then there's Tyrion's Hands of Gold song. This is a song about Tyrion and Shae, but it is freakishly accurate about Jaime and Cersei too. He rode through the streets of the city down from his hill on high. Over the wines and the streets and the cobbles he rode to a woman's sigh. For she was his secret treasure, she was his shame and his bliss. And a chain and a keep are nothing compared to a woman's kiss. For hands of gold are always cold, but a woman's hands are warm. Tell me that isn't about Jaime giving up his right to Casterly Rock to be with Cersei in King's Landing. Tell me that isn't about Jaime's literal hand of gold. You remember what happened to Tyrion and Shae, right? You remember how Tyrion choked Shae to death with his necklace of gold hands? The song is about Tyrion and Shae's relationship, but perfectly mirrors Jaime and Cersei's relationship. So why wouldn't Tyrion literally choking Shae to death mirror Jaime choking Cersei to death? It just fits too well. Cersei is on a spiral towards madness. She is becoming the Mad Queen, and Jaime, as you all know, killed the Mad King because he didn't want Aerys to blow King's Landing up with wildfire. Well, what is Cersei planning to do? There are also several instances where both Jaime and Cersei compare the other to a stranger, or the stranger. The stranger is the aspect of the Faith of the Seven that represents death. There's a lot of symbolism there. And I take evidence from the show with a grain of salt, but in this scene from season 7, Jaime is standing off the coast of the Fingers and Cersei is standing directly on, wait for it, the neck. You can't tell me that's a coincidence. Both Jaime and Cersei have also said several times that they will leave the world the way that they came into it together. So I think that Jaime is going to choke Cersei to death, and while he's doing that, Cersei is going to fatally wound Jaime in self-defense. They will both die together, just as they always said they would, just as they always wanted to. It would be such a tragically poetic end to their relationship, to their storyline. Everything fits, everything points to Jaime being the Valonqar, and if he isn't, I might just rage quit. And number 10, who will sit the Iron Throne at the end of the series? This I don't have a solid theory for, but let's go through the process of elimination. I believe Jon will fulfill the prophecy of Azor Ahai and heroically die while fighting the White Walkers. Tyrion will live to the end of the series, I think, but he just doesn't seem like one who wants the throne. He is content to be the man behind the curtain. So if anything, he's gonna end up the hand of the king or queen. Sansa will become the Lady of Winterfell and possibly the Queen in the North, but I have no idea how people think she will sit the Iron Throne. There's just no plausible way. Fake Aegon is fake. He's not even an issue. Dany is the most likely. She has blood claim. She is a conqueror already in her own right. I think if anyone is on the Iron Throne, probably gonna be her. But I think the most likely ending is that the monarchy will be dissolved. The Seven Kingdoms will revert to being independent kingdoms with their own kings, and the Iron Throne will just be gone. And that is the end of a tag of Ice and Fire. I will tag Jessica and Christina at Game of Tones, who are so much fun and have the best channel name ever. Ashley at Don't Have a Degree in Reading, who seems to be just as obsessed with A Song of Ice and Fire as I am, and Jackie at Books with Elves, who created the tag that inspired this one. And of course, anyone else out there who loves A Song of Ice and Fire and wants to do this tag, you are tagged. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you enjoyed my ramblings on a series that I love, love, love. If you did, give the video a like, subscribe to my channel, all that good stuff. Let me know down in the comments if you agree on me with any of these things, or if you disagree, let's have a conversation. And until next time, everybody, happy reading. Bye-bye.